Good day, class. So, this is a recorded lecture for our course EE3247 or EE447 Methods of Research for EE under the online education setup of Ateneo de Davao University for the course, what do you call this, for the program of electrical engineering. So, this lecture will talk about the review of related literature. This is our lesson 3 for this course. Uh, The review of related literature is very important sa ato ang what they call this, pagbuhat sa atong research. This is like kung sa building pa mo ni siya ang foundation, mo ni siya ang kana strong na columns that supports the weight of the entire structure. So if our research is a structure, mo ni siya ang iyang backbone, ang iyang basement foundation. So the purpose of the literature review is to know the use of content, ideas, and approaches from other forms of knowledge relevant to your desired research problem. So gina sa review, literature review dapat imuhang makam up kung unsay content, ideas, and approaches ang gigamit sa other research or sa other forms of knowledge which is relevant to our research problem. So the literature review can help us refine the research problem to give us ideas of the things and methods that work and didn't work from other research works. So mas ma-refine nato, mas mabalaan nato kung worthy ba jud i-pursue ang atong research problem, kung researchable ba atong research problem sa mas gi-discuss nato sa atong lesson 2, and to give us ideas of the things that work and didn't work from our from the previous researches. So it's like learning from other people's success and mistakes in order to not commit the same mistakes again. And if their methods work, then i-follow na to ang ilang methods. So the literature review is somewhat an intensive activity na buhatan dyan nato sa research. It helps us identify the novel contributions sa wide body of knowledge because the literature review tells us about the gaps in the knowledge. Mahibala na to kung unsa to mga aspects sa ato ang knowledge na dili bitaw dili pa kayo na naka thoroughly researched, and that mo na siya ang kana bitong kana nga gap, i-fill in nato na siya nga gap, and that becomes our novel contribution. The two most important and superior sources of literature review are textbooks and research work in a form of journal articles. So textbooks because widely accepted siya, and journal articles, those forms of research works because they have undergone the scrutiny of other researchers or experts in the field, makorek ang mga mali, and we become more confident na tama nga information na itong mabasa from textbooks and journal articles. So other important sources are reports from international organizations like World Health Organization, like the UN, collaborative research works, government laws and mandates like Bayanihan Act, scholarly presentations, conferences, other publications, patents, and other forms of intellectual property. So, kuan ni siya kanang what they call this? Uh, Reliable po ni siya nga sources of information, but we have to be careful kung unsa ka reliable bitaw ang atong reliable sources. So a good literature review is based on the breadth and depth of the evaluation and analysis of prior works. So dili nang enough ng mga one or two lang ka mga babasahin or write-ups or research works ang atong makam up sa atong literature review, but the more the better because it tells us na kana bitaw murag na exhaust na jud natong information. Kumbaga kanang dili kung kana bitang kung mag-amigo-amigo sa imong networks of friends, kung naamoy dili ganan sa isa tapos gikwento lang gani is from other person. So it is not enough to listen to one or two persons, but it would be better to, verify and verify the information para mas masiguro na to og dili ta dayon mo jump into conclusions. So man siya ang importance sa literature review. So the literature review is about highlighting the new and existing knowledge. So natay ginatawag nga new knowledge, napatay ginatawag na exist knowledge. So new knowledge in research can only be interpreted within the context of what is already known and cannot exist without the foundation of existing knowledge. So for example of existing knowledge is kanang mga Ohm's law, kanang unsa pa ng mga law natong ginakuan, Kirchhoff's law diya sa circuits, 'di ba? These are existing or foundation knowledge. So ang new knowledge is kana bitang knowledge na derived from existing knowledge. So man na siya ang gina-represent sa kanang mga recent na mga research as more complex, which masipag kung saan siya ka-complex, it builds up on the existing research anyway. So uh, the literature review, when we highlight the new and existing knowledge, it helps us point out the missing or the gaps in knowledge, those specific points in what we know na kanang medyo missing or needs more thorough understanding, more research to be done, and kailangan na to na siya og kanang bitang in order to point out kung unsa tong gap sa atong knowledge, we need to highlight the new and existing knowledge. So muna siya kung pasabot ni item 3. The textbooks contain the older established knowledge and the research papers the newer work. So muna siyang manang rason nga no textbooks and research works or journal articles are very important, two most important sources of information for our literature review. But this is not all the case with a research paper where the goal is normally to present a small piece of new knowledge. So, ang textbook is a wide, more fundamental knowledge, while research work is more recent but only a small piece of knowledge which builds up again sa existing knowledge. The research paper is written for other researchers out on the edge of knowledge, and it assumes that the reader already knows a lot in that field. So, kung mag-publish tag research paper, it is assumed na kana bitaw na atay background knowledge sa field of what we are researching about. And what do you call this? It can be difficult to find the right work to read, but the objective with all this reading and learning is to be able to get the knowledge that one needs to build the foundation. So, literature review is dili lang na siya kana bitang basta na lang kay makam up na material to serve as a basis or foundation, but also it needs to be selected properly, knowing na dapat relevant or related jud siya sa research natong ginabuhat. That's why it is called related literature. The review process must explain how a research item builds on another one. So ang knowledge, kumbaga, is kana bitang gabuild up from previous knowledge. So, kailangan na dili ma-argue, kanang ma-substantiate nato sa atong literature review kung giunsa ang piling ana ng mga new and existing knowledge, forms of knowledge. Then, this is because useful research should elucidate how and why certain technical development took place so that it is easy for the reader to comprehend why the present talk is being undertaken, and a good literature review should provide a convincing answer to that question. So mo ni siya ang reason ngano kung magbuhat ta og literature review dapat updated ang atong knowledge because knowledge only builds up on previous knowledge and the future forms of knowledge also builds up on the present knowledge. So we have this po a rule of thumb sa research na dapat mag-come up ta og publication at least five recent within the past 5 years. This is in order to ensure na kanang ang quality sa ato ang literature review is adept or within the current context of what is happening in the field. After collecting the sources, usually articles intended to be used in the literature review, the researcher is ready to break down each article and identify the useful content in it. So mo dili nimo i-consider ang tibuok research journal paper nga relevant, but you only need to point out those few things nga relevant sa ato ang research, like method section, ang iyang results. So inana ta inana ta nga paagi mag-synthesize sa ato ang mga literature related literature like textbooks or journal articles. A researcher should analyze the relevant information by undertaking the following steps. First, understanding the hypothesis of the previous research, understanding the models and the experimental conditions used, making connections. Important jud na makita nato or ma-appreciate nato nga ang connections among sa mga articles nga itong na-gather. Then comparing and contrasting the various information, what works and what didn't, what is relevant and what is not so relevant. Then finding out the strong points and the loopholes. So basically ato ang sa ato ang pag-gather sa ato ang research prior art or journal articles in the past, malim ato na siyang critically assess kung unsay strengths and weaknesses sa mga researches which are relevant researches or relevant forms of knowledge which are done in the past. So again, it is always good to be suspicious of the claims made. So dapat critical ta sa ato ang review sa kanina mga researches or articles. And the goal of the literature survey is to bring out something new to work on through the identification of unsolved issues. So again, gap in knowledge na kanang wala pa day na maka-discover ta ng gaps nga kanang wala pa day siya thoroughly na investigate or kanang feel na to, di ba siya feel, but we kind of see the need why we have to pursue the problem that we have chosen. So how do we do an effective literature search? So a scholarly publication is one wherein the published outcome is authored by researchers in a specific field of skill. Such work cites all source contents used and is generally peer-reviewed for accuracy and validity before publication. Essentially, the audience for such works is fellow experts and students in the field. So, man siya nakanindot sa journal article as a form of a research work. It is because before na siya i-publish, mo undergo pa na siya scrutiny for accuracy and validity. Mo nang we can take confidence na kung unsa man ang gina-claim aning mga journal articles, they are more or less correct. And it is up to us kung relevant siya or dili. That's why mo na siya itong trabaho sa ato ang pagbuhat sa literature review. While most of the engineering researchers need to refer to articles that appear in scholarly journals, books, or other peer-reviewed sources, there is also substantially useful content in more popular publications. So popular publications, which means na mas daghang tao or experts or researchers ang nag-add to ng mga publications. These are informal in approach and aim to reach a large number of readers, including both the experts in the field and also amateurs, but the content focuses on news and trends in the field. So, relevant na gyapon ang news and trends because naay role na gina-play ang popularity sa ato ang sa mga forms of knowledge na itong gina-include sa ato ang literature review. So, mo na siyang reason nga no kailangan nato i-widen pa mo ang ato ang pag-scope sa literature, but not too wide na medyo overwhelming na siya, just a right balance of things. A researcher should use all search tools for comprehensive search. So, it is quite natural na magsugod ta sa Google because Google will give us a rough, what they call this, results na relevant sa ato ang topic na gina-search. No one place or one source exists that will provide all the information one needs. So wala dili na tinuod na kana bitong sa isa lang ka source nimo makita ang tanan nimong related literature. More or less dili jud ingon na ang case. Kailangan nimo mo consider og multiple sources like mga multiple journal or publications to look for those researches nga relevant jud for our research. A researcher must consider what type of information is needed and where it could be found. So, kailangan natin identify what type of information o kung asa natin ni makuha ang information. So, basically, ang publications, gina-arrange na siya per area of discipline. So, uh, we have sa sciences, we have biology, we have chemistry, and then we have applied sciences like engineering. Then under that engineering, napatay mechanical engineering, napatay civil engineering, then natay electrical engineering. Then sa electrical engineering, napadyo yung mga subtopics under it. So, kailangan na to siya may balaan because it is important to know where these informations can be found. And also, not all information is available online, especially kanabit ang kanang mga research works na wala nakaabot o kanang online na platform. So, naapoy mga research works na dili publicly available. Like, kailangan ni mong subscription in order to have access to this database. So, those sources are also worth considering. So, searching is not a kanabitang one-way process. It is in fact an iterative process na kanang, let's say, na magbalik-balik juta. So, it is an iterative process which involves experiment with different keywords and operators. Kani, interesting ni siya nga ka na mag-explore tag different keywords. It is because Americans or the American universities or maybe American institutions use different words in contrast to the European research groups. So naay na ang mga tendencies, so we need to be careful in our usage of keywords. Evaluate and assess results. So we need to use filters like unsa na mga parameters atong ginapangita sa results anin ng mga researches. We also have to modify the search as needed, especially kung maka-encounter tag dead end. Then, when relevant articles are found, look at their citations and references. So, dili porkeg nakikita tag kanabitang feeling na to relevant kay siya nga literature pero wala day ga-cite. So that's also some, let's say, not really red flag, siguro mga yellow flag, something na kanabitang we need to warn ourselves with. After the search is complete, the researcher needs to engage in critical and thorough reading, making observations of the salient points in those sources, and summarize the findings. So, manini siya ang part where ato nang isulat ang ato ang kuan, ang ato ang kanabitang mga points na nakuha sa ato ang pag-search sa literature, sa ato pagbasa sa literature review. So this entire process may be needed to be done multiple times. Like I said, searching is an iterative process. And also, mas ma-refine bungo na tong work if we tend to look more and more researches to include in our literature. The conclusion of the entire process of the literature survey includes a summary of the relevant and important work done, and also the identification of the missing links and the challenges in the open problems. So, muna siya ang two most important things na dapat ma-highlight sa itong literature review. Then it is very important also to not lose sight of the purpose of an extensive search or literature survey. Kay tungod, again, overwhelming dyan siya. It needs more time. It needs a lot of reading sa ato ang part. Kanang, what do you call this? What do you, kanang bitong, sa kadagan sa itong ginabasa, murag mawad na tag point sa ato ang pagbuhat sa literature review. So before I proceed further, na ako'y sample sa kanabitang literature review nga nabuhat na ko in the past. So, I didn't say in the past. Actually, this is still a current review process na kong ginabuhat. So, I'm reviewing a topic, a research about permanent magnet generators, specifically intended for renewable energy. So, just as a bit of a sample, ako siyang gi-arrange per topic or per kanang murag outline. So, nakoy outline about introduction, about general info about PMGs. Then I also have considerations on permanent magnet generations intended for renewable energy, na po ko'y PMG for thermal applications, so on and so forth. So, dili ni siya a matter of copy-paste lang. In fact, na ako'y mga kanabitang ako mismo ang nag-synthesize sa ilang sa work na kanang kung makita na ko nga kanang na ay one or two or three na mga uh, papers na talks about the same thing. Ako na siyang gina-include para mas ma-encourage ko nga kanang what they call this, mas ma-encourage ko nga kana bitang to look more kay it is actually helpful nga kanang the more na magbasa ta, the more na makikita bitaw tag connections or relationships between research publications or journal articles. So, wala na siya, example lang. Then, we have points to remember in doing a technical reading. So, number one is that finding the right work to read can be difficult. Actually, lisod jud kay magsugod og literature review because kana bitang wala ta kabalo kung unsa kadaghan dapat atong kailangan. So, I suggest na kanang magsugod ta with one, two, or three at a time lang muna in order for us to thoroughly select kung relevant ba ang work or dili. So that's an important thing to consider. So, manang dili siya sayon. Second point is that uh, reading journal articles is not the same as reading a newspaper. Sometimes, ang other forms of reading manggod is leisurely. But journal article is kana bitang very intentional na pagbasa. So we need to uh, we need to expect nga kanang naatay articles nga basahon several times para mas ma-absorb jud nato kung unsa yang pasabot. And it happened to me several times actually nga dagan kay kanang sige ko read kay dili po ko dayon-dayon makasabot. Third point is that after an initial skimming through the paper, the third point is to uh, do an initial skimming. So dili nimo siya basahon dayon tanan-tanan kay naman jay kuan naman jay kana bitang dili relevant sa tibuok papel na to na collect. So kato lang mga relevant na mga parts lang po datong kaon. Then, pwede na to sugdan ng skimming process by reading the title and keywords. Like, for example, if you're studying about solar panels, then mana siya ng mga keywords ang dapat makita nimo sa title, basically. Otherwise, you are either moving to a more complex search or you are moving something away from your course of action. So if the paper has continued to be of interest so far, then one is now ready to delve into the introduction section to know the background information about the work and also ascertain why the authors did that particular study. So after looking at abstract or title and basahan din na tong introduction just to give us an idea na kanang ang hugot sa research na yung gibuhat kay same pud sa hugot na atong sa research na atong ginabuhat karon. So ana lang. And kani bonus lang ni nakana bitong as you work through the literature, you should also consider not only the knowledge that is written but also the reputation of the people who made that knowledge. So it is not enough nga nindot ang sulat but also we need to consider kung ang reputation sa researcher, sa expert or sa academician nga nagbuhat ani ng mga forms of knowledge. Kay after all, magkailhanay lang mo dyan ng mga tao sa field and these people tend to recognize kung kinsay hawd sa ilaha. So I hope I have discussed or gave you a rough introduction of what the review of related literature looks like. And hopefully, once I get to settle some things with the research, with the process or at the step of determining the research problem, then we can proceed directly to related literature. So if you have any questions, please give me an email. Thank you so much and see you sa ato ang catch-up sessions.